This is the commemoration of Professor Alito, and now the floor will be open. And as we have got a lot of requests from Sir Alito, Professor Alito's close friends and associates who want to speak on this occasion, this space will be for you all to interact.
It was really wonderful to hear everybody speak, and I just have only a little more to add, which is from a slightly different history of Alito. I came from Bombay to Goa, and Alito had a very deep connection with the neighborhood I work in very closely in Dharavi, and this is something which perhaps a lot of people don't know, that he spent many years in a very humble neighborhood, and he had friends who became really his lifelong friends. And particularly Bhau Korde, I wanted to just mention about him because Bhau also lost his wife, whom Alito knew very well, very recently. And on behalf of Bhau also, I would like to tell all the friends over here that we join all of you in remembering Alito and celebrating Alito. And he had many different histories and always full of surprises, as we all know. And yes, we miss him a lot.
Hello, I'm Subhash Sarekar. I would like to just say a few words about this book in the sense the way it got translated. I was with Alito in the last few months, on and off, and then Alito mentioned that there's a book that he's coming out with and all this sort of thing. And I naturally asked him which language. He said English. I said all Goans, all writing about this book. सगळी गोंयकार सगळी कोंकणी जाणा everyone knows. Why don't you have a Konkani version of it? Dinesh is a very good friend of mine, so I thought I would put Dinesh onto Alito, and then Alito was very happy that Konkani book will have Konkani book. Incidentally, we also thought why not have a Marathi book, Marathi translation, so it can spread wider because Konkani, as all the publishers have told you, has got a very small market. So we thought, why not Marathi? So it went on, but this happened so fast that before anything could be decided, Alito was no longer with us. And then Vishram gracefully agreed, happily agreed to translate the book in Marathi. Incidentally, we could not find anyone who had this sort of a social background and who could understand the issues and translate it in Konkani. There were people, but they didn't have the time. So the Konkani project just remained. In fact, we actually made a plea to all the authors that why don't you translate your own article and give it to us, knowing that every article would be different, but it would be from the same author. But there too, we did not get any success. So the Konkani project still remains. We will try and do it. And the thing which I should have done a bit before is to congratulate the team for coming out with this book, and that too on this day, which Alito is always with us, but on this day we cannot forget it. And another small point I want to make is that Alito also had said that this was the first book. We had some more things and more stories and all that sort of thing. So I would request Pavita to take the lead and continue the good work that Alito has started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suhas. Would Professor Rosa Maria Perez like to speak?
Thank you so much for this moving tribute. Yeah. So first of all, thank you all for this wonderful tribute to Alito's memory and life, academic and personal. Well, it's difficult to talk about Alito without a deep emotion. I first met him almost 30 years ago, but it was in 1999 when I started carry out field work in Goa that we became very, very close. And I'd like to say that close as colleagues and close as friends, as well as along with Milan, his wonderful wife and my dear friend. They always hosted me, cooking for me the little fishes that I love, but also sharing their knowledge with me But that's on a personal basis, and until the end of Alito's life, where I was in Gujarat and in close touch with my dear friend Kaushik Tarakan, until the end, I'd like to, and up to today, I'd like to underscore Alito's influence in my own writing. First of all, when I started, as I say, carrying out research in Goa as an anthropologist, as a social anthropologist, in a web of connections that at that time included Alexander, Bob, and Susanna, Alito had immediately found affinities between ourselves. Of course, I had worked with a cast of Dalit and lived with Dalits for a long period. So we had that in common that still persists in my life, to value not only the knowledge, but more than that, of the so-called subaltern. But I would like to underscore something that is not only an academic quality of Alito, but also a personal quality, is enormous compassion and his enormous generosity. Since day one, he supported my PhD students. I think some of them may be in this audience, like Pedro Pombo, Cláudia Pereira, Jason Fernandes, Raquel Pereira, and others. But he was also a consultant for a research project that I carried out that I supervised in the early 20s. And most of that project is Alito's imprint. So I'd like to say so many things that don't fit in the time and space of this meeting, of this tribute, and so many other people would like to talk. But I'd like to tell you that when I write, and of course, as an anthropologist, as my friends and colleagues in this audience know, I write from the perspective of the subaltern, and I teach from the perspective of the subaltern, so-called subaltern, o Adam, who am I? Indeed, Alito is there. Alito is always there. I will have a little tribute to his memory now at ICAS, the International Convention of Asian Scholars, where I was invited to co-organize a panel on academic freedom. And Alito, of course, is there because he had compassion, he has generosity, he taught us all a lot. And but he also taught us the importance of freedom, of academic freedom, of individual freedom, of freedom, in a word. So I would like to say, as I said, so many things, and I'm very moved. But I remember that he brought many, many dear friends to my life. With my late dear friend Madhvi Sardesai, we shared so many trips to the field, so many long conversations, days and days over the years. But he also brought to my life dear friends like Maria Aurora Couto, whom he wanted us to meet each other. And indeed, it was an epiphany when I first met her, and so many other friends and colleagues. So rather than a colleague or a friend, I'd like to, without any demagogy, to call myself a student of Alito. And I'd like to thank him for so many that he taught me. And I think that Milan is listening to us. Thank you, Milan, for being Alito's best friend, wife, love, and for being my friend as well. To the best of my capacities, I will keep his memory alive, and it is alive. He is alive until the end of my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think now we have Mr. Bob Newman with us.
I'm sorry to be technologically a little deficient here, but I would just like to add a small amount because I know there are so many people here, and I knew Alito for many years. I met him, I think, in 1982. He was a student perhaps at that time. I didn't know him very well then, but over the years, when I came to Goa, I would always meet Alito and Milan, and I enjoyed their hospitality, their friendship, and their knowledge, especially to do with, my work in Goa as an anthropologist. Uh, I also met Alito in Portugal, and he came to my house here in America a couple of times, and so I miss him a lot. He was a man, excuse me, he was a man with a great heart and a very interesting mind, and I believe that he did something that's very rare, no matter where you are in India or America or any other country, and that is he had compassion for his students. I really admired how he dealt with all the students and helped them and encouraged them. Uh, I wish that I could have done the same with many of my students. Though I tried, I would say I was not successful as he was. And if people say, well, he didn't write, I think he did a lot more than that. He was a great man. And well, that's really what I want to say. I miss him, and I'll always remember him as long as I live. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Would Norma Cordero want to speak?
Well, like Bob and Professor Bob and Rosa Marie, who I met in Alito's house, I just wanted to say Milan has been really a great part of Alito's life and work, silently in the background, a pillar of support. And she was also a go-to person for him. He often consulted Milan when he was really at a loss or stuck or very disheartened, because as a personal friend of Alito's for 40 years, I know that Alito was impatient. He wanted so much of change. He wanted so much of improvement in the society, and sometimes the very people he wanted to help and he thought they should be doing more and fighting more, and he would sometimes want to give up maybe. But I think Milan's wisdom and her input, her insights helped him to develop that equanimity and to take a step back sometimes and have more patience with his work. Although their work was very separate, they shared the same kind of values and ideals and worked for the same kind of outcomes in the society. Milan, through art and art workshops and her creativity and helping the economically disadvantaged women to earn more and so on through their handicrafts and stuff. And Alito, through his work, through his students, and till the end, I think she was a source of great strength for Alito always. So that's what I wanted to say. And I want to congratulate all these students who have worked so hard. And I want to congratulate Vishal Gupte for taking all the trouble to do the Marathi translation, which is so difficult. It was a huge job he undertook, most gladly, I think, for Alito's sake. Well done to everyone who has made this happen.
We have Professor Susan Sadhu with us.
Well, I think I don't have much to say about how wonderful person was Alito, because I think all our common friends already spoke about this. I had the privilege to meet Alito, I don't know, 30 years ago or more. And but I had the privilege also to have Alito here in my university during 1 year. and he was teaching here, and he was also influencing our students. We had an agreement with the University of Goa in 2000, the year 2000, and Alito came in 2002 and 2003, and he stayed here also. Milan came. So I had the possibility to show Alito what he also showed me in Goa, the other parts of Goa. So I showed him the other parts of Portugal also with Alexander and Gabriel, and also to introduce him to our colleague Samuel Araújo from Brazil, who cannot be here, but he went to Brazil to work a little bit in a favela of Maré with Professor Samuel Araújo, who is an ethnomusicologist. And well, you know that Alito was always trying to find out other ways of working outside of the mainstream. So working with in a favela in Maré, in a favela in Rio de Janeiro was like being in touch. Hi, Gabriel. Being in touch with other way of other Brazil, and always, as Professor Rosa Maria emphasized, always with the subaltern way of seeing the world and speaking about the world. Well, I remember the first time Alito came to my house. I was finishing my PhD thesis. It was in 2002, and I was well. He saw my library in about Goa. He was very surprised to see a library on Goa in Aveiro, and I was very surprised with this post-colonial way of seeing the world. And he told me, do you know a guy called Walter Mignolo? This was in 2001 or 2003, too. He's speaking about something called decolonial thinking. So this is very interesting to see that. For me, it was a surprise. And it was not so many, nobody was, I think, even in the anthropologists in the North, I don't know, Alexander, but in 2001, nobody was speaking about the colonial thing, no? But he was calling me, and well, I bought this book because of him.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So I bought this book. I was trying to see, he's signed by Walter Mignolo because Walter came here for a conference, but I knew Walter Mignolo, and I came into this concept of place of enunciation because of Alito. And he came from Goa teaching me here what is the South American way of seeing the world. And in a certain way, he was a very premonitory person. Okay, well, he was writing before the mainstream. He was thinking before those who came from privileged places and then are the stars now. So I think this book is very important because it should be spread through the academies, different academies in other places. I want to include him in the bibliography of my students and to spread him to Brazil and to the other places where this decolonial thinking is creating roots. And I think that Alito should be included in this well, constellation of thinkers that produce knowledge on the colonial way of seeing the world. Well, thank you for inviting me for this and this moment and this tribute. And thank you all, Favita, Avita, Mozinha, and I'm expecting to work with you, Mozinha, as Alito used to tell me, you should work with Mozinha, okay? So we should work about music. And as Alito also was a music lover, and okay, we should keep Alito in our minds and in our works. Thank you. congratulations for all this.
Thank you for speaking with us, Susanna. Um, I now call Celia Ribeiro to speak with us.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Hi,
Celia.
Celia.
I thank
Hello.
you
Hi.
for this wonderful celebration of the life of my brother. It was a very tedious task to put all these things together. So I thank you for doing all this. I thank all the speakers who have given us insights about the book and about Alit. And most of all, I thank the students for overcoming their fears, their anxiety, and courageously opening their minds. And that made it possible for Alito to deliver his God given talent and knowledge. And that gave him surely a lot of satisfaction in life. But it was possible, as Norma has already said, all this was possible because he had Milan with him all through. And Milan's wisdom and ability to discern and understand and give him guidance is what made Alito do what he has done. So I thank God for all this and thank each one of you who have in different ways been his friends, his students, and have done everything for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia.
With due respect and gratitude, I would like to express myself through this platform. It was Sir Alito who helped me to break the silence and helped me to bring out my voice in the form of writings, and especially in the form of writing of poems. When I was confused as to what should I work on for my MA dissertation, and I could not think of any topic, it was Sir who helped me in researching my own Gauda community. He was the one who motivated me to write my dissertation. I can recall what he said to me once. He said, Mozina, you start writing. Write whatever you feel like to. That's when I said to myself that I should write, and I began writing. He was the first teacher with whom I could share my experiences of my life and my pain. Without his guidance, support, and motivation, I could have not been able to express myself. I'm sure if he would have been here, he would have been very happy at this moment, seeing me and hearing my voice in front of all the audience today here, talking fearlessly on this platform. A silent voice which has been transformed into expression. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mozina. Preeti, would you like to come and say something? Or Venisha?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Today is a very happy day for all of us, and I'm sure Sir Alito is also very happy at this book launch. At the onset, I would like to thank the team behind this book in making this book a reality. You know, it's been a decade or so. We all have been waiting for this book. I will not take much time, but as the name suggests, you know, Hanv Konn or who am I? Sir Alito took his students on this journey of self-discovery, of finding ourselves, our strengths, and even our weaknesses, to understand from where these weaknesses came from. And he not only taught us, but he touched our lives, and he touched our lives in such a way that he transformed us forever. I remember when I showed him what I had written after visiting Kurdi for the first time, he said, why don't you work on this for your dissertation? At that point of time, we were, searching topics like, to do my dissertation. And that was also the time that I first visited Kurdi. And I said, so, but how? This is so personal. This is so emotional. And from there, the journey to unearth more stories began. And this ultimately culminated into a documentary titled Remembering Kurdi by Soumyananda Sahi. What Sir taught us was that every student, every story counts. As a student, a decade back, as a student, and to be told this, that my experience counts, my insights count, that my inputs count, and that too in an academic world, was a big thing. So Alito taught us that in higher education, we are not the consumers of knowledge, but the creators of knowledge. And that is what he has done with his students. And he has also taught us to question the existing knowledge. There is really so much to talk on, sir, and so many of you have shared so many beautiful experiences on, with him. But as one of the priests at his funeral service said, he said that Alito was an institution in himself. Like a true sociologist, he never passed judgment, and he was ever so concerned and welcoming. He treated us like his own children. And Sir Alito is like, you only feel happy, you only feel motivated and so inspired. Even for some time, I was not keeping in touch with him, but you know, he was ever so present. I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to be his student. And Alito, the story lives on in his students and every one of us who came in touch with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vanisha, for sharing this with us. Can we have Vishal Rawley to speak to us?
I just want to talk about what Alito always said was his next mission when Hanv Konn was already getting his direction, and he was very happy that students were taking it on, and there were so many people to help him. He said, what I would like to do is to work increasingly with my own community, with the upper caste people. And he said, we have to acknowledge the wounds we as a community have inflicted. And he said, it's, he had all these dilemmas. He had these complications, which made him such a beautiful, emotional, sensitive person. And he had it almost like had a guilt feeling about him working with his students from the tribal community. He just wanted them to speak for themselves and himself to just recede to the background. So he didn't want to produce so much of his own writing rather than give them the voice to speak. And he said, for me, the mission should be to talk to my own community. And whether it's the upper caste or people from the colonizer countries. And he said, there's a lot of work that is needed to unpack the kind of crimes, atrocities, and the wounds which we have inflicted, and also the suffering of our guilt and the kind of realizations we have when we understand what we have perpetrated. And so that was his next mission. So I was, I guess, happy to be his confidant at times. And we shared long car rides and journeys going to villages or mining areas and having long conversations, and or just going for a snack. He was a voracious lover of street food and all kinds of delicacies. So along the way, of course, between mouthfuls, we would exchange a lot of conversations. So that's something he often confessed, that I really do want to withdraw, and my work should be to be working with the upper class. So that is the he said, in all these years I've realized working with your own community is also very important, rather than sort of championing the cause of the subaltern. The subaltern should be able to take speak for themselves in their own language. Writing may not be the form, song, music might be their form. So he wanted people to have a place in the academic world, but he also didn't want to make the academic world the only platform which rises in front of us as the where knowledge descends. So with all these complications, he always messed with our brains, but he was also very messed up himself, and that made him so wonderful to talk to. And yeah, so I thought that something was left unsaid, something he spoke to me about, so that I should share. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Can we have more authors speaking? Rajeshwari, if you're there.
Good evening, everyone. Myself, Rajeshwari. I am one of the author in Hanv Konn. Back in days when I was in university, I never had a trust in me that I can write. Like I was not even confident in talking in English. One day I asked, like, sir, can I write? Like, I don't know. I'm not so good in English. I don't have anybody at home who speaks in English. And he said, it's not necessary you have to write in English. You can write in your own language, but you have to mention that you're going to write in your own language. But later I studied English and I was able to write. My work is on my identity, that I'm trying to find who I am. I'm coming from a fishing community where girls are not given that much important to study. But luckily, my parents encouraged, and I was in university. I was very lucky to have Sir Alito as my guide, and he put a lot of trust in me that I can write, I can express my thoughts. I was so puzzled, I don't know what to write. There were so many thoughts in my mind, but his proper guidance helped me to put my words, my experiences. And I thank him a lot. And I thank all the team who have supported and brought this book into a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajeshwari. Sir Sachin?
In the first place, congratulations to the whole team, and I'm happy to be part of the book as one of the authors. And in fact, I believe, like just like Salito, that there is no beginning and the end. Realities are always multiple, and you can never express realities in a true form, like only written through words or through what you say, to any other form. But realities are always multiple, and basically, coming back to this whole thing, where this started. Like, in fact, out of all these different authors here, and as I'm part of it, like, I'm actually the odd man out. They are all nine women who have written, and I'm just one man amongst the rest of them. And in fact, this was the same point, when I was doing this work back in the university in 2005. Uh, he happened to ask me, why would you be interested in a topic like this to work on, which is more, has to deal with the women and not like the normal other aspects that you would like to research upon in the field of sociology. And I basically had something, that in part I shared a life which was similar to what women experienced. And that's how, like, I found, like, I was connected to this idea. And in fact, my initial title would have been, like, that in Konkani, for example, Jenna go by Rastat, Baila Goyan Folga Martat, with a question mark. And there were lots of things that were written actually in the initial work, which were too explicit. And I remember, sitting with him under the tree somewhere on the road, or even somewhere where we were, having tea together, and we had lengthy discussion and basically agreements and disagreements that like, whether I'll be able to defend what I felt the strongest, as almost a part of life shared with the women in my place where I belong to, that was Kunkoli. And it in a way, I would say, like, ignited the spirit of doing research in a different way. And more than anything, what I would like to conclude from that was that it ignited into me, like, to take from him a lot of his ways of doing things in the classroom. Like, right now, I'm myself a teacher learner. I always call myself a teacher learner, and I took from him a lot of things that he practiced in the class, like because we did have multiple different type of learners and plural backgrounds that they came from, and how would we still address every single student as a child and bring out the best in them. And I think I've been able to live up to that. And I owe a lot to him, to his contributions to me, and in what I have become today. And once again, I would not take much of time because I know there are many people waiting to speak. And thank you, one and all, for this effort. And I think Alito's, it's not the memories, but rather it's the force that he ignited into us that lives on. And I think we need to take it up from there and continue in the same spirit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sir Sachin. Uh, Please, can we have Priyanka?
Hello everyone. It's my privilege to be student of Sir Alito. It was a decade ago, that was in 2010. I got an opportunity to work under Sir's guidance, changed my life because of his different way of teaching and learning methodology. He made me to think critically. Sir Alito was an expert in turning one's limitation into strength, and that's what he did to me. To be frank, and this I often used to say to Sir, writing was not my passion. But Sir's experiment made me to write. My first piece of writing you can see in Hanv Konn. So drawing title for this book, Hanv Konn, from my work gives recognition to my writing itself. To add on, we have scholar from Brazil who wrote a paper on our work titled Memory, Post-Memory and the Role of Narratives Among Women Writers from the Adivasi Communities of Goa, which gives much wider recognition. So I stop here as I was given 2 minutes to speak. So in Alito Sir's words, all power to Hanv Konn. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Mr. Alex Rodrigues, would you like to speak now?
I know Alito from school days. We met in a student organization when early 70s. So I'm very happy to be part of this occasion because it brings memories of Alito, and also Alito lives on in the lives he touched and from what I've heard. So the early 70s were days when we were part of student organization. It was a days of formation also for all of us because we broke away from traditional ways of from school to college and things like that. Alito began to also work when we had a work campus, and then decided to stay in a small farmhouse in a place called Column and explore working with workers and things like that. So those are the early stages. But what really, when listening to each one of both the professors and students, it shows how Alito lived his life and touched many lives. And the question of who I am was a question that Alito had within himself, and we all had within ourselves, because it was almost a conflict of trying to understand who you are in reality, where there were a lot of conflicting issues that you confronted. His sense of social justice, his sense of equality, his sense of coming from a background that could have also been a question mark in itself. So, though he didn't write very much, but you can see his writings coming through people who have spoken and who have written also. And I'm happy to know that he touched lives of students who now are able to write about themselves and come from backgrounds which are so diverse. And so I was there in the 70s, and a group of us from Margaon, who Alito was from Mapsa at that time, but he lived in with us, and we knew each other's families very well because we used to live in each other's house. And I was there when he also passed away in Bangalore, and he still had the spirit of life even in his last few days. And I'm also grateful to him who has touched my life, and all the people who have written now who have touched my life, to see that Alito still lives on. And also to Milan, who was a very strong support of Alito. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. Can we have Mr. Jyotish Sri Kumar?
I only have something personal to share. I know Alito uncle and Milan auntie from childhood, and they were very good friends of my father, Professor Srikumar, who was also at Goa University, and my mother, Rajashri. So we lived close to each other for over 2 decades, and as families, we spent a lot of time with each other and at each other's homes. And a very strong memory of my growing up is listening to the two professors, Alito uncle and my dad, deep in discussion over many topics of pedagogies and research frameworks and everything else like that. They loved talking about over family dinners. And now both of them have moved on from this life. And to me, Alito uncle is like a father figure, and they were both my mentors. So after I lost my father, if there was someone I would have gone to discuss my own career, and it would have been Alito uncle. And to me, it's a deep personal void that he's no longer here in this physical environment. At the same time, he'll continue to live on in my memories. So it's wonderful to see this tribute to Alito uncle and his work and the work he has inspired, and the outpouring of love for him as a person and as a professor and mentor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have Samir Kelekar?
I knew Alito in the 70s, but I have to give a little bit of background. The thing is that there was this guy called Hugo de Souza. A few of you might remember him. He was a journo, a philosopher, and a friend of my father. Now, my father was a Konkani activist, freedom fighter, not very comfortable with English, and quite conservative, while Hugo was the other opposite, not so comfortable in Konkani, all Western, meaning at least superficially, he would look very Western. And the thing with Hugo was he used to hang out with these young boys. Alito was one of them. There are others. Alex was there, who just spoke. Hartman was there. Cleopath was there. And many others were there. And the nice thing was that I was in high school, and the influence of these guys was so much that it opened my mind. In fact, they had a huge library called Ideas, where there were all kinds of books on sociology and everything, that it became, my life's goal, not to like make money, but to be as intelligent as these guys. And then I went to IIT. I'm a technologist basically, but at IIT also I participated in student movements, and the influence of Hugo, Alito, and others has been so much on me, much more than IIT. I went to the US, did a PhD, but nothing compared to these people. And then again, I was in touch with Alito. He was in the university. He was a go-to man for me in the university. And he was like joking around. He says, "You are NRI. You are like a son-in-law of the government. Your father is a freedom fighter. He's also a son-in-law of the government. So you guys are just both son-in-laws of the government." And the thing is that the trust level was so much, and meaning we were young guys. If you had a crush on someone in the university, first thing would be to go to Alito and find out the details about the person. Okay, and the nice thing is that he married Milan, and Milan is sister of my close friend Milin, who was my classmate at IIT. Okay, so but unfortunately, I then came back from the US. I'm in Bangalore now, and I work for an MNC. I lost touch, meaning last 20 years I have not been in much touch with Alito. But thing is that Alito, of course, was a rebel and anti-establishment person, and guy would question everything. And sometimes I feel that being in the university, meaning he should have been leading movements and doing, meaning that's the kind of brain he had, and Hugo used to call him the future of sociology in India. I feel very sad that he passed away so young.
Thank you, Mr. Samir. We'll have Miguel Braganza now to speak with us.
Alito, I know, is from my school days when I was in the 5th and he was in the 10th in the same school. And at that time, he was a boxer. With Eric Menezes and others, he would be boxing in Alti, and I would be fascinated just to watch them do it. He was a lean, muscular guy, would take on people maybe 1.5 times his weight and still win. The Alito that I met later on at the university when I worked there for 2 years was a completely different person outwardly. It was like Sylvester Stallone from Rocky becoming George Burns from Oh God. Or for those who watch Bollywood, someone as dashing as Vinod Khanna becoming someone transforming like Amol Palekar. A completely different kind of person. But within a year, I realized that the Sylvester Stallone in him, the Rocky in him, had not died. He took on the establishment right up to the deputy registrar when there was a mark scandal. And one deputy registrar and one assistant registrar had to resign because he pursued the case till it was proved that they were guilty. And so that Rocky was still there in Alito. He didn't care about his career. He was working for the university and he was taking on the university establishment. Not an easy thing for anybody to do. But he pursued it till the end, through the twists and turns till he got it done. Alito was not formally my teacher, but I have learned a lot of things from him. He had ways of influencing you, even in the canteen. The university canteen is where sometimes we used to meet. It was a canteen of sorts in those years because we were in the parking lot of the Vice Chancellor's office. That was the canteen. And there he would interact, he would talk about things, and then he would talk about different things which Vishram Gupta has rightly said. He was a disruptor of your entire thinking process. He would make you think and rethink your ideas and get them out. I was in touch with him till maybe 2 months before he passed away, and he always had something to say. I've known the family. His elder sister Fatima and younger brother Alino, of course, is a good friend of mine. The younger sister Celia, I just know. But within that family also, if you look at Alito, he's completely different. He does not have any resemblance in his activities, in his academic pursuits to what the others did. And very nice that there is a book now remembering him. Because that is one thing that he did not do, to author a book to be remembered by. And we have, and thanks to the team and to all the students, because he has influenced their thinking and he has influenced the way they see themselves. And that, to my mind, is his legacy that I also carry forward with my own students. It's to make them know who they are and to take it from there onwards forward. Thank you for this opportunity to share a few thoughts on Alito. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Braganza. Now we have Joachim Dias.
Thanks everyone, and especially Frederick and his team who has organized the such a lovely event, and to remember Professor Alito. I was from his. I can say I'm just remembering Alito, and may his soul rest in peace. He's always in my thoughts. I'm from his batch of 2004 from Goa University. And I remember especially coming from a college directly into the classrooms of Goa University with the approach, where we were, in the colleges we're told, just, it was all rote learning. But when we entered the university, there was Alito waiting with his unique approach of thinking outside the box, of thinking differently, innovatively, questioning our thoughts. And sometimes as students, I can say even I felt a bit bitter. Oh, everything seems to be wrong, whatever you write seems to be wrong. But it was all that questioning. Ask yourself why you have written that, why you're writing, why you're doing that, how you could write differently. But then after that, now that I'm a researcher in the United Kingdom University, I realize the importance of the approach that has helped me and is still helping me, to build up my career each and every moment. The very thing of asking, that book, Hanv Konn, just asking even whatever you're writing, what you are writing, question yourself, question your thoughts, all that is, I would say I received first from Professor Alito at Goa University. And I also remember another student, how he was supportive of, each and every student. I was getting to know him, during my 2 years when I was there, doing my tourism dissertation and everything. And as students, we were economically really, tight with our pockets. And I remember it was Alito who gave me and another student a voice. He said, "You have a paper to present on tourism, but I want to give you all a chance. Take this cash, take a ticket, and go for a conference in Udaipur, Rajasthan." It was such a great opportunity, to, have Alito as a mentor, do your lovely project, under his mentorship, and then he giving you a voice to go and to speak to hundreds of professors, readers from different universities from all over India in the field of sociology and social studies. So I won't take long. I really remember his contribution that he has done for our course and towards me, and I would say it's ongoing. It's part of me. It's part of my process. It's part of my identity. And I would say everyone in Goa need to use this opportunity of asking who I am. The Goan identity, Hanv Konn, everyone can ask that. And that will bring us, to a greater realization and a consciousness. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Joachim. Can we have Kastov Naik now?
Good morning from where I am right now. I am a doctoral student at University of Pennsylvania. And I think those of you who've spoken before, most of them are Alito sir's friend or his students. And I think there is a third category of people that I think needs to be slightly represented as, the younger scholars that came that worked on Goa. I was not Alito's student, but at some point I just was inculcated in the mentees that, the long list of sort of mentees that Alito had. And and that's how I was introduced to Alito, as somebody was researching on Goa while I was in Delhi. And since then, our sort of relationship has sort of continued. And Alito, I'm slightly overwhelmed also now remembering him, and I'll share one personal anecdote that he had, and this is one of his, in his last days, one of my play was being staged in Goa, and he called me up and said, I need to come see your play, and can you get me tickets? I said, so sir, it's free, of course, so you can just come in. He said, but just keep me 2 seats, and 1 seat just near the door. And I was puzzled as why he would make that request. And later only he told me that he was not keeping well, and probably said if I don't feel easy, if I feel uneasy while in the theater, I might just have to leave. But he stayed back for the play, met me after, had a long discussion, and yeah, and that's probably his last meeting that I remember very vividly. And he would often come to Delhi, and we would meet over lunch or dinner, and he introduced me to a lot of other professors there. Um, one thing I wanted to say, that there has been this whole thing of Alito did not write, and that has been always the mystery of why Professor Alito never wrote so much that he could have. And I think it's one of the perils of the academic world is that you're judged by how much knowledge you produce in the written form. But I think for Alito, all of us can make an exception that Alito did not write papers, but he wrote a lot of people like us, a lot of people who will go ahead and write a lot of things about themselves, about Goa. And Hanv Konn is perhaps one of the star example of that kind of effort. As a pedagogue, as a professor, he has sort of empowered a generation of scholars who will work on and from Goa. And I think that is perhaps the biggest contribution as a teacher one could ever dream to make. And Alito has sort of succeeded in doing that. So yeah, more power to him, more power to his students, and the kind of work that will live on from here on. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have Dr. Sheila Gupte?
So many of Alito's friends have spoken and talked about their memories. It seems as if everyone thought that they were special friends of Alito. And we knew Alito for more than 35 years, and I would like to share some of my own memories. So Vishram and I came to Goa more than 35 years back. And Alito was one of our very early friends. So we came here as a naive couple from Nagpur in Maharashtra, and we had a 3-month-old baby with us. And we did not know what we were really walking into. So at that time, the language agitation, the Konkani movement, and identity politics in Goa were peaking at the same time when we came. And we tried to make sense of these churnings and currents in Goan society. It surely impacted our own personal and professional pursuits. So Alito was one friend with whom we could always discuss these fine nuances of our experiences as we struggled to find our own feet in a new land. So we had friends, professional colleagues, acquaintances. Many of them didn't know how to place us in those days. I was Konkani speaking, but my Konkani was different from what is spoken in Goa. Vishram was Marathi speaking, and our name was certainly non-Goan. So many of our acquaintances and friends valued us as friends and humans. I was also, of course, useful as a doctor, but most people were often confused whether they could accept us as their own, as one of them, or were we to be treated as outsiders? So were we bhaile or were we bitulle? Were we one of them or were we someone else from outside? So Alito was one friend with whom we could talk and analyze these sometimes funny, sometimes tragic issues, very frankly, without holding anything back. Nothing was taboo for Alito. We could talk to him about anything, literally anything, personal relations, relations with our parents, our in-laws, children. We always knew that he would not be judgmental, and so he was almost like a counselor for many of his friends. We didn't always agree with him, and we sometimes didn't take his advice, but he almost always helped us to understand issues from different perspectives. But of all these discussions, what I cherish most is interacting with him as our two boys were growing up. Alito and Milan were there for us whenever we needed them, whenever we needed a sounding board through the trying times that our boys were growing up and becoming men. Both Satyajit and Abhijit really miss him very sorely today. I used to often joke that Alito liked to focus on and analyze the pathology of human interactions. He obsessed on the less talked about and the more painful aspects of human conditions and human relationships. So we often spoke about how we would prepare for our old age or death, or how we would face serious illness. And I used to say to him that all these discussions are fine, but how we actually behave when our time comes is really unpredictable. So I have seen seemingly very composed people breaking down and apparently hysterical people go through crisis with the calmness of almost like spiritual gurus. But I must say that I was truly dumbfounded to see the grace and the equanimity with which Alito faced these matters in his own life. How he meticulously planned all his matters, his personal issues, financial matters, even his own medical treatment till the end was truly mind-boggling. On one of our visits to his place, we saw him sorting out his collection of books, giving detailed instructions about which book should go to whom in case he did not make it through his treatment. His sense of humor had not left him, and I was really stunned. Today, I salute his courage and his self-knowledge, his grace. He was graceful in health and happiness, as well as in the face of tragedy, ill health, and death. Really, we miss you, Alito. We miss you very much. Thank you for letting me share some of my memories about Alito.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila Gupte. We will have Professor Koshi speak with us now.
Thanks, Elizabeth. As I was just turning my microphone on, I could see Gasper's message. Time is not an issue. Well, I must say this is truly Alito's, presence. Because when you are with Alito, the time stops moving. So, I mean, as many of us who have been associated with him might remember, whenever we meet in the canteen and all, cups of teas after cups, Alito would shout from that, table, aniak, one more, like that it goes on. So the time was never a constraint with Alito. Let me first of all congratulate the whole team who finally succeeded in bringing out this one book which Alito was eagerly looking forward to. I mean, I remember the formation of these essays as part of his colleague in the university, where sometimes we have discussed along with Alito and some of the authors when they were writing this. I mean, the process of writing these dissertations, I too had the opportunity to be part of that process. So I'm really happy that ultimately this has materialized. My association with Alito goes back to 1996 when I joined Goa University as a lecturer. So I became Alito's colleague, but over the years that relation developed into more of a friendship, and towards the end we were even neighbors. So as a colleague, one thing which I always value in Alito is his commitment to his students and his lectures. He was always experimenting with his class, and even when he was bringing in this new pedagogy to his class sometime towards the middle of his career, I was a bit skeptical about its relevance in teaching at university. But to cut a long story short, let me say that he finally won me also to his camp, where I began to appreciate the pedagogical method which Alito was experimenting with. And as a colleague, it was not just the teaching and academic aspect that you would like to cherish when you remember Alito. His acute knowledge, absolute knowledge about the rules and regulations of the governance of a university. So whenever you are in doubt about a particular ordinance or a particular aspect of a statute, you could always discuss with Alito. And as I've seen it also in the chat, Professor Raghuram Trichur mentioning quite many times, you know, when you converse with Alito, you finally leave more confused than what you were earlier. But that confusions come out of a deeper kind of an understanding that you develop. So what you thought quite naively to be the case with Alito, you would begin to see, you know, it at a more fundamental, level of depth. So he was one of the wonderful colleagues that I had at Goa University, a friend with whom I remember 2 years back, you know, when I went for the IFI, how empty I felt, because International Film Festival in India, both Alito and myself, we used to, you know, research together the films and book the tickets and go almost, for the identical movies, and coming back many a time, having, you know, dinner outside, having a drink together. So it's often said that you don't get great friends among colleagues. You know, there are many opinions about it, but Alito was an exception. He was a great colleague and a great friend too. And towards the end of his career at Goa University, we became neighbors too. Alito has moved into the same building where I was staying. And even after post-retirement, I also moved to his neighborhood, Nagali Hills Colony. So in a way, the influence of Alito over the years over me as a colleague, friend, and a neighbor is so much, great. I became part of the family. I should say, I could see Celia, Fatima, and all here. There were many occasions when I had the privilege of having this home, made bebinkas and the mangoes from Alito's sisters, and all these wonderful memories. And Alexander here, I'm sure you will remember our ride in his blue Fiat, a car which Alexander might have driven more than Alito perhaps whenever he was in Goa, the blue Fiat. And of course, I started pillion riding with Alito on his Suzuki bike, then the Fiat, and then the Tata Indica, and finally the Wagoner, the last car that he used. All vehicles I was traveling with him. And thanks, once again, I thank all the authors, his students, the publishers, the translator, and the organizers of this meeting. And my special thanks to Alito's family too, Milan, sisters, Celia, Fatima, and all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Koshi. Now can we have Dr. Claudia?
Hello. I would like to congratulate everyone for this so beautiful homage. And just to complement, I will show some photographs that also show Alito. But my main, what I really wanted to share is that Alito and Milan have really changed me. So have changed me in personal terms and academically. And this is really a deep meaning in my life, because nowadays, in many things I do, I also think in Alito and Milan, what would they do? And so they really taught me on how to think. So thank you so much. And I will just share here 3 photos. I've met Professor Alito. Let me see if I can share. Yes, I met Professor Alito through the classes of Professor Rosa Pérez in Portugal. And can you see this photograph? I think you can see the photograph. So we have here Alexander N, Bob Newman, and Alito. And we met in Portugal. You could see the photograph? Yes, okay.
Yes, we can.
So we met in Portugal in this meeting organized by Rosa Pérez. And we discussed history and colonization and decolonization. And it was very meaningful for me, because that means I worked 12 years on Goa, and otherwise probably I would not. Secondly, I also like to share a photo that many Portuguese scholars will also have something similar, which were the deep discussions we had at the house of Alito and Milan. And Alito was taking the photo, that's why he's not in the photo. But we can see here Milan and Rosa Perez, myself, Samit Kander-Parkar, Jason Baum-Newman, and others. And so this was deeply meaningful for me. I did my thesis on what means to be tribal on 21st century among Catholics and Hindus on Gaura. And so it was, my thesis will be another one if I have not met Alito. And so I also like to share this. And Alito had a lot of influence on Goa, as we know, but also outside Goa with Goans. And so I will share last photo in the thesis of Asawari Sardesai Nayak, where he was present at his thesis here in Portugal at Isquete. And so his influence was really across many oceans and many countries, and also many lives. And so in a very touching way, I like to say that he keeps very present at my life. I also like to add that besides being very pioneering as an intellectual and in personal terms, he was also very political. Because in Portugal, we still could not do what he achieved. In Portugal, the deprivileged groups are the Roma people, and we don't have any book written on Roma people by Roma people. And now you have that in Goa, no? So the groups who were illiterate now, or the ancestors who were illiterate, now have a book on them, written by them. And also Alito deeply contributed to the inclusion of professors in Goa University, of being from the scheduled tribe. And we don't have that in Portugal still. We don't have any professor who is from Roma people. We still have to achieve it. And that is something that the government of Portugal is trying, and Alito could do it in Goa. So he was deeply influential personally, academically, but also politically. And I just hope we can do in Portugal what he did in Goa. So I also hope that the persons who are at the government and at Goa University can really follow, because we already have in the government a person from a Roma people. Roma people are like the deprivileged groups in Portugal. I hope you can have some from scheduled tribe in Goa government, and keep having more in Goa University, because we really, all of us, win with diversity. And today we are here from so many countries, from so different backgrounds, and it's really a winning with diversity. And just to end, I would like to congratulate Favita Diaz, Mozinha Fernandes, Velipa, Elita Bará, all co-authors and co-authors of the book, because it's really pioneer and innovative. So all the best.
Thank you, Claudia. Okay, next we have Sushila Mendes.
My first memory of Alito is as a young 19-year-old, and today I'm more than 60, in Sawarden, where we all students went, and that's the time the police had fired on a worker from MRF, and we had gone to protest. And we were so frightened actually that the police would kill us also. And he just jumped out from us who were sitting down in his kurta and that bag he had, that jola. And he said, "Come on, who's going to get frightened of whom? Let us see." And that line struck in my mind throughout my life. You know, that daring that he showed to a 19-year-old. And then I got in touch with him again while doing my PhD. And he's the first man who introduced me to sites, research sites, which nobody had told me about. And he had this way, I don't know whether he did it to others, but to me, he did that. He came to my side and sat down. You know, he didn't sit across the table. He left his chair, came on my side, made me feel comfortable, and put me at ease to speak to him. So I don't know whether that was characteristic of Alito, but he did that to me. And nobody does that, nowadays. We academicians don't do that. And therefore, when I look at Alito's life, I sometimes think of my own shortcomings as an academician. His unconventional methods I need to use. His way of mentoring people was exceptional, which I need to emulate. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor. Can we have Dr. Shubha?
Hello, everyone. I wasn't really expecting to speak. I just saw Frederick's message a few minutes ago, and I'm so glad everybody is here because I was woefully late in coming here. And just listening to everyone makes me realize something that I felt when we heard of the tragic news of Alito passing. I think I've since then realized a few times the importance of rituals of mourning or so on, because I think getting together and sharing memories of a person or whichever way you get together is such an important right that that person deserves. It's such an important factor in the healing of mourning. And I have to thank the organizers for this, to have brought everybody together today to share our memories of Alito. And it is so interesting how I can identify with bits and pieces of what everybody has been saying, which just shows the kind of person he was. So I have to thank my friend and his friend Rahul Srivastava, who's definitely here, who introduced me to Alito when I first came to do field work in Goa. After that, I think for like many of us, he's kind of became a touchstone for me. The day I landed, always had to meet Alito first. We would go out for dinner and share everything I'd been doing about work, about life. And with Alito, as many of you have said, the boundaries between work and life and food and drink and everything were always overlapping. That he opened my eyes to so many aspects of Goa, which nobody else would have done. With seriousness, with teasing, pulling my leg also, as he did with many, with his sense of humor. I learned just so much, and I miss him very much, like all of us do. It's my great regret I did not see him after he was ill. And strangely, the last meeting with him was in Delhi, which he did not like at all. He was dying to get back on the flight and leave after a meeting. And that was the last time we met. So I'm sure there's endless stories that everybody has. But for me, he just was such an important part of not just my working in Goa, but in ways of working more generally. And with this book, with Hanv Konn, I feel a strong sense of identification because I was working very closely with one of the authors here, Mozinia Fernandez, and right through my project, he's called me to his classroom a few times to share what I was doing with the students. So I felt very much a part of his class at the time, and got to meet a few of these who have become authors. And he always said that, that he had sort of got encouraged with this thing of letting these people speak in their way, that I had something to do with it also in giving that space to Mozinia. So I feel extremely happy that this book is finally seeing the light of day, though sadly without Alito among us. Thank you so much for giving me this few minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Shubha. Dr. Raghu, you can speak now.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Listening to all the wonderful things that people have said, and looking back at my interactions with Alito, I can see all those good aspects hitting me in one form or the other, consciously or unconsciously. I met Alito in 1995 as a rookie PhD student trying to figure out his research in Goa. And I had actually heard about the legend of Alito even before I landed in Goa. Now people said, oh, you should just go to Goa University, meet up with Alito, and he will set you on your course. And little did I know how he would set me on my course. There was never a direct answer to a question. A question you posed to Alito, the answer always came back in form of questions that will trouble you. And over the years, I realized Alito was not there to provide you answers, but allow you to figure out a way to answer your own questions. And that is something that I have continued, cherished, and I have continued to replicate in the context of my own students. And people don't need to write in order to be scholars. You also need people who are sounding boards, enable scholars to become better scholars. So for me, Alito is the consummate scholar who did that difficult job of sitting back and forcing people to ask questions of themselves, not just of what they find outside. Thank you very much. The legend of Alito lives on forever.
Thank you, Dr. Raghu.
Can you hear me now?
Fine, fine.
Yeah, thank you for giving me this privilege to speak. I have been here right from the beginning of the session. I knew Alito very personally right from the early 70s. He was a very close friend, worked for me and my family. I was hesitating to speak here because of the kind of company we have kept for the last couple of hours. Very high intellectual people from all over the world. But I felt I needed to speak because I knew Alito very closely. Alito was one of the first people who mentored us way back in 1980s when we were very young people to start Goa's first film society. We started the film society and we gave it a very rare name. We called it Vichitra, which means different. And I think that symbolizes Alito at that time because he was the guiding force in selecting that name, because that was the kind of person that he was. Alito, as a student, was remarkable. I remember we had a camp at one time and he was described as the shining light of the camp. I lost track of Alito for many years because I moved, I was traveling all over India. I lost track of him, but I got back to him in 2015. Strangely, he sought me out for he needed advice for a totally different subject. I got back to Alito and Alito got back to me. And from 2015 till the time he died, I was particularly close to him. And when he did die, I was totally shocked. And I happened to mention to Suhas that we need to get together and organize something where we could meet. I said, Alito was very close to me. And Suhas turned back and he said, you're not the only person who's saying that. There are many people who felt that Alito was very close to them. So I'm very happy today to meet these people, even though it's online. People who have been very close to Alito, people who have shared their experiences with him. I was, to be frank, very close to him in the last few years because he would come. He was working with a group of students from South Goa. So whenever he came down to South Goa, he would come and stay with me overnight, spend 2-3 days. So there were a lot of interaction, a lot of talk. And the day that he left to Bangalore for his operation, I happened to be there to say goodbye to him. And the thought that still struck me when he came out to drop me to the lift, he said, Milan perhaps doesn't realize that I may not be coming back. Today I realized that he was telling me that he may not be coming back. But I feel that Alito has come back in so many ways. And one of the ways is the kind of people that I have met today, the kind of thoughts that have been expressed and the way that you have expressed it. And in my own humble way, as I consider Alito my special friend, I would like to say thank you to all of you, to all the organizers. I've met several of his students on several occasions with Alito, and I'm very happy with the kind of production that they've come up with and the tribute that it pays to Alito. God bless you all.
If I could just add something here, we are not going to finish before Professor Raphael, Professor Pranab, and Albertina and all speak. But let me come in and give some light relief, if you don't mind, because a function like this would not be becoming if we end on a very serious note, or even if we stop on a serious note. So the other day, Milan reminded me that when I was very young, with hair and black hair, and we used to meet at B6. I would ask Alito one question repeatedly, and that was, Alito, give me a sexy story. Okay. Now, this was a reporter versus academic clash. And despite my recent interest in academia, I've never become an academic, and I have no kind of intentions of getting there. So I still have this side to me. So I would ask Alito, give me a sexy story. And I had completely forgotten about this, and I couldn't even recollect. But when Milan told me this story, it all came back in a flash. And then I tried to, deconstruct, as Alito would say, what was I asking him in those days? So basically, I was just telling him that, okay, this is a clash between our two disciplines. Journalism wants something which is instant gratification, which makes sense in a hurry. Education cannot give you those kind of stories, but please, now this is my job. You have to help me in that sense, and you have to give me this kind of a sexy story. And he would, of course, have a good laugh at my cost, and that would end there. And fitting in education, which is a slow-moving, a long-term kind of process, into the news columns of the newspapers, which I used to write for very actively in those times, is not an easy job. But Alito and me used to have a good laugh over it. Towards the much later on in life, I had, he had the last laugh at me when I said something which he thought was extremely anti-intellectual, anti-theoretical. And I said, y'all academicians, y'all are just into building theories which may or may not have any relevance to real life and things like that. And he got quite infuriated with me, actually. And he actually threatened, we were sitting at some cafe together. He said, either this guy walks out or I walk out, in that sense. So I said, no, Alito, you please don't walk out. So that was that. But of course, we were great friends. So in spite of all that, those are just my memories for whatever it's worth. And I hope that after me getting down to this level, people like Advocate Albertina, Professor Raphael, and Professor Pranab will say a few words. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rico. Can we have some more people speaking?
I think it's been a long meeting, so I'll just briefly talk about what Vishal raised earlier, and we've had long discussions on this about what constitutes privilege, because it's so normalized that we don't even understand that we have that privilege. And I was privileged in another sense to have these detailed, long, as like all of you have been talking, these long discussions. Like we would go for a meeting and then he'd drop me, and then there outside in my house, in the car itself, we'd have another 1 hour long discussion in the car, which, on the whole, on many issues. And especially towards the end, we were discussing, in fact, we were together part of a group called Social Justice Action Committee, which the late Tagman Pereira had initiated. And we in that meeting also, he brought up this thing that it is not for those who happen to be privileged to talk about the disadvantage, but rather we should be talking about privilege and showing how it is being normalized. So that I thought was important, and he actually discussed some cases with me, because I was telling him, no, but that person, that's not privilege. That person has studied hard, and she was there on her own merit or whatever. And then he would actually break it down for me and show me how there was privilege involved in the backdrop. The other thing was also about how it was obviously not easy for him when he was in the university to bring up the whole issue of reservations in the university, because he was part of the, in that sense, part of the establishment. And still, I mean, it, you know, I understood how difficult it must be. I myself, understood the consequences of raising issues of reservations, and I understood how much difficult it must have been for him to do that in being in the university. So that's what I wanted to say. There's a lot that I can say on and on, but these things I wanted to highlight.
Okay, so anybody else would like to talk?
Yeah, I would just like to pitch in again for the Konkani translation. If all the authors who have written the articles are willing to write or make the Konkani version of it, I believe most of them can. One or two cannot, we can get someone to translate along with them, and we can come out with the Konkani edition. And
Actually, we were Sir Alito and me had a discussion, but that time I think he was already diagnosed with cancer. We were having a discussion about having the Konkani edition, but then we couldn't figure out in what dialect it would be and in what script it would be.
Yeah, so
we
when it comes, sorry to interrupt you, I think that's a later question, because we can also have it in Konkani Kannada. If it comes to that, we want the book to spread everywhere.
Mr. Sadekar, one suggestion, if I may. See, I feel that even the Konkani could come out in a diversity of scripts and a diversity of dialects, maybe with each essay having a common translation. I mean, not a translation, a summary or an abstract in English or in standard Konkani or in Devanagari or whatever. And the remaining could be open to variations in that sense. Just a suggestion. I don't know how it would work.
No, Patrick, that is fine. That is not an issue at all. What I'm saying is, at least first let it come in Konkani. Now, whether it's Roman or whatever.
Towards the end, the last thing that we spoke about was asking the authors to write it in their own Konkani and in their own dialect, and then see how it goes ahead. But then we couldn't put it into action because of his untimely death.
No, now with a book behind you, that will be one more push for them to actually try it. No, because it means only doing their own essay. It's not a lot of work in that sense.
And I'm sure most of them must have thought about this and then converted it to English, looking at the background and the way they have all spoken.
Yes. But now the question is, I think the only hurdle would be time with the given, employment. They're all teaching and doing some work. So whether they all would have the time, energy, interest
So Parita, can I interrupt?
Yes.
It's not just a question of time. It's also the willingness. If you have the willingness, you will find the time. If you say the time, you start with that, then it is not going to happen.
Yeah, correct. To find the why. Mr. Sadekar, you keep interrupting and you keep persisting, and we'll somehow push them into doing it. Don't worry.
Yes.
Yes, like how Gasper said, we could have the discussion with the authors. It's their work, so let them also be a part of it.
Yeah, whatever you all decide.
Sure.
As long as you all decide positively, it's okay. But you can decide whatever you wish.
Yeah, sure. Because authors, they have to be willing. No doubt about that. Or if they are not willing, then we need to find some other way
to convince them.
Either that, or we have to find someone else who is capable enough,
No, but your idea is very interesting, because their own language and their own dialect also brings
dialect. Actually, that is what I feel, that they should write in their own dialect.
This
not
book,
that it has to be standard Konkani.
Even the English at this book, Alito had the vision of having the authors write in their own version of spoken English. Then we felt that it might be a little bit too radical, and we might be ghettoizing in a standardized English world. We might be ghettoizing them. But for Konkani, I think a different logic might be relevant in that sense.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And even there are certain things, that's my opinion. Finally, the publisher Dinesh also will, or someone else who publishes will also have a say. But it can also be multilingual, like how Alito used to say. Some things they can say in English, some words or whatever.
Yeah, Mr. Sadekar, when we do some Portuguese books, we need to get them back in the market, but there's absolutely no relevance to it to today's Goa. So we put one para for each chapter in English, to to tempt an audience into at least trying to see what is in the book. So that way, definitely. This is getting technical and talking shop, but anyway.
that discussion we can have with Dinesh.
Yes. Another Google meeting.
So shall we close shop for today, tonight?
Yeah. We've crossed 200 minutes, so 210 minutes, and I think there were 150 participants at its peak, and now there are still 52 left with us.
Is Alexander still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Alexander. How are you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm good.
Now the remaining 3 hours we spend in saying hi to each other.
I'm really grateful for all of you organizing this, and Alito is all in our minds, and he really deserves this. Thank you so very much, Favita, Rico, Elizabeth, Gaspar, and all others. Thank you very much.
Rafael has raised a hand. Professor Rafael, your last chance.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I was hesitant because I was not too sure of my device and network. My memories of Alito stretch back to 85, 87 or so. Very briefly, he was known for arguments. I think all of us in different ways will say argue or discuss or whatever. If you said Jack, he would say Jill. If you said X, he would say Y. And at the end, I mean, those discussions would go on for quite some time. I remember meeting him at the end of the working day, and we would still be stuck in the corridor for another 30, 45 minutes. End of it, you were left wondering whether, so much talk was really necessary. But you could still see that he had a different way of looking at things. Also because of the hassles he had with university administration and rules, I also was forced to go through ordinances and statutes and be a little more proficient in understanding statutes and ordinances and bureaucracy and so on. One point that distinctly comes to my mind is, if I'm not mistaken, Alito was the first faculty member to get a personal computer in the university, in his cabin. So he bought that, but I believe a few months later, he was actually given a show cause notice asking why he was keeping an electricity consuming device in the university chamber, in his chamber. And, it may look very surprising and, quite questionable now, but that was the kind of attitude that existed then. So you can imagine the kind of struggles he had to put forward some of his ideas and have them implemented, even open concept of open book exams or changes in pedagogy and so on. I remember that there were quite a few discussions that took place kind of in the corridors or in the canteen, because Alito came up with very revolutionary ideas or challenging ideas. And then there were these after effects, ripples, discussions, and should open book exams be allowed or not, a whole lot of these things. After he started the digital storytelling project, the One Credit course, I think we saw the outcome of so many students who produced their stories and the impact that he had. Also, he encouraged 2 of the candidates to present their dissertations, which then earned them recognitions abroad. He often had to challenge the administration, and the reservation issue was one of those which shook up the university, but I can see the benefits that so many of the candidates now enjoy, because Alito at that time stood his ground and took up very challenging position. These are just snapshots of memories that I have of Alito. Of course, whenever we met, it was nice, very cordial speaking to him and learning from his perspective. I'm sure all of us do have fond memories of him. Thank you.
I was feeling a bit shy to come and speak, but I think after hearing all these stories, just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone. I'm a bit of an outsider to this circle, I think, but I'm actually married to one of Alito's niece, and to me, I feel a great sense of loss because I didn't know him for too long. So having this has really helped me know the man And two things that have really stuck with me from today's meeting is firstly his compassion towards his students and trying to get the education across to no matter who, right? So something that I joke with my wife quite often and now with my parents is, when I was in the third grade, they actually held me back and made me do another year because I was bad at, my grades were bad compared to my peers, and my parents always compared me to my cousins. So yeah, the teachers and my parents thought, okay, this guy can't learn, so they kept me back. And that has always stuck with me my whole life, and it took my parents immigrating to Canada for me to break out of that. And today I have an engineering degree because I broke out of that social circle and was able to teach myself in a way that I could learn. So that's one. And the second one is his work on reconciliation with, uh, the tribes and things like that. Like living in Canada today, the big conversation that's happening here is about how the colonizers and the Catholic Church tried to, whitewash the indigenous people, and a lot of the indigenous kids were sent to these residential schools, and a lot of them never made it back home. And recently they've unearthed a lot of these bodies and things. So there's a lot of conversation about reconciliation. And while y'all were talking about this, I'm like thinking this is such a global topic. It's not just, Portuguese and Goans, it's Canadians and indigenous people as well. And I hope that this propagates globally. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Can we have Samit next?
Hi. Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Samit. Hi.
Well, there
We
is
can
so
hear
much to
you.
say. Yeah, there is so much to say, but I'm a bit mushy too. I find I'm a bit overwhelmed by um, the full meeting. Hearing all the people saying all these things, and the role that he played in my life is so, I mean, is so transformative. You know, is I don't know even how to conceptualize it. Has changed me into a man that I am today, and very compassionate. I mean, though he was always uh, he showed affection towards people who are come from disadvantaged sections of society. He never held it against people who come from what he termed as privilege. And for a person like me who was like really coming from the social setup that was privileged, but still, marginalized or suffering or feeling inadequate in certain ways. He was very open. He was very encouraging. He was helpful in every possible way. And so it's like he was not sort of this ideological person, who will be like, okay, so you come from this section of society, therefore you are not. Um, so he was very, it's different, his behavior was so unique and so compassionate. I could almost see, eventually, as time passed, I could see sort of a very Christian presence into him, very compassionate, very loving and helpful kind of personality. It's a big loss. I'm still, what you call, I still wish he was here. I mean, I almost felt like he left just at the time when I could now argue with him. I was like prepared, coming back to India, and now I'm going to argue with him, and I'm, hopefully defeat him. But he was gone, and so it was like so upsetting for me. I mean, his death was very upsetting. It's like he left. Like if he was a boxer, then he left the like game in between. Like I felt very I wish he was here. I really, really wish he was here for some more time. Thank you all. I really loved listening to you all.
Thank you, Samit, so much. And thank you for everyone who spoke their hearts out today. It was so wonderful to hear so many close friends of Professor and his associates, and such a wonderful way that Professor influenced and impacted so many people, so many lives. We really thank God for giving us Professor Alito. He's not with us here, but I think we should take this forward to better heights and take this book forward. So with this, I thank everyone for coming here tonight, and yeah, I think we'll end it here. Thank you so much. I also want to thank the team. Thank you so much, the whole team of Hanv Konn. Thank you.
Group photo. Gaspar, group photo. Is it possible in 2 or 3 batches? Gaspar's having his dinner quietly somewhere. Now this is the attendance roll call. Let me try. Okay, first shot. I'm getting those with their cameras on, but not the others.
Yeah, I think everybody, please, you can put on your cameras so that we can get a nice click.
Yes, view. Change layout.
And say cheese.
Anyone with drinks? Anyone with drinks? Please raise your glasses. Cheers to the big man.
No, they told you to raise your glasses.
Anyone with drinks?
Raise.
Right, Alexander. Lovely. Cheers to the big man.
There's just water, but there's water that Alexander is holding up.
Cheers to the big man.
Whatever it is.
The story lives on.
Only Alito could have brought all of this together for this long.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Alexander.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you. Let's not wait. Let's not.
Thank you.
Let's not
Thank
wait.
you,
till someone else
Professor.
passes away.
Thank you, Alexander and Kyo.
Let's not wait till someone
And
else passes
Vishram.
away. Liz.
Yes.
Let's not wait till someone else passes away to have another meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Yes.
See you.
Thanks for everything.